Okay, here we go. Continuing on in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're making very good ground, I have to say. Probably by chapter 17. Okay, we skipped a few things. Typically in halacha, you don't learn things unless they're pertinent, unless you really need to learn them. So there are parts in halacha that are going to be talking about women going to the mikvah. Okay, or that's not maybe that's not such a good example, but like the laws of mourning and whatnot, we don't need to really learn them. There's some laws you don't learn until you have to learn them. So some of the laws that we skipped over, I felt like they were a little bit too detailed, too intricate. And when time comes, we'll learn them when we need to really learn them. Okay. I figured we'll go through Shema really quickly. A little bit about Shema. Here we go. The earliest time for reading the Shema is the same time for putting on tefillin, which is, I believe, dawn. A little bit after dawn. No, it's not dawn. It's around sunrise, a little bit before sunrise time. There's a certain period of time you're not allowed to put on tefillin. You have to wait. Actually, in our shul, we don't put on tefillin until about 7:05 in the morning. Those of you that live in New York, it's not such an issue. It's usually about 6:30. But here, the sun hasn't hit that degree yet. So I don't know what time it is. It's 7:05, 7:04. I usually roll in I'm usually learning and then I roll in a little late. Plenty of time in the right time to put on tefillin. So Shema, you can't say Shema too early. In other words, what are we talking about over here? You have an obligation to say the Shema twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. So where does morning start and end? And when does evening start and end? If you say it too early in the morning, you're not fulfilling it in the morning. And if you say too early in the evening, same thing. So if you go on zmanim.com and you type in your area code, or chabad.org, and you type in your area code, it's called halachic times or zmanim, and it'll tell you when's the earliest you can say Shema, when's the earliest you can put on tefillin, when's the latest, when does Shabbos come in, when does it end. So it's about sunrise, which is the difference. What is sunrise? Getting into a lot of detail here. Sunrise, according to the Mishnah, it's the first Mishnah in the Torah, in the Mishnah. Mei Masai Karin Shema Ba'arvis. When's the earliest time you can say the Shema? Mishash Akoinim Nichnasim Le'echom Turmasan. I'm not reading that inside. I've said it so many times I've memorized it. The earliest time basically you can say the Shema in the morning, I just read the evening, is when you can tell the difference between the color the color green and the color blue, I believe. So when the sun is high enough that you can tell the difference between green and blue. If it's too dark, you can't tell the difference. If you're colorblind like me, you can never tell the difference, really. But I don't know. It's about 7:05 in the morning nowadays if you live in Detroit. Okay, so anyway, I'll get into a little bit more detail about that at the end. And the time period extends until the end of the first quarter of the day. So midday is not noon. If those of you that don't know, it's not really noon. We have what's called halachic times. Midday is probably around, if you live in New York, you live on the East Coast, Midwest, it's like about 12:50 maybe, 12:45. That's considered midday. So the quarter of that. So you can say the Shema until about 9:40 in the morning. Let's say it starts at 7. You can say the Shema, the earliest time to say it is at like 7 or 6:40 maybe, until about 9:40 or 10 o'clock. And I'm not really giving you guys enough times. But if you're really concerned, let me know where you live. Give me your area code and I'll tell you. The length of the day is reckoned by daybreak until the stars are visible. Yeah, so here we go. Daybreak, which is dawn, right? And that changes. Dawn is a different time every time of the year. In the winter, it's a little bit later. In the summer, it's a little bit earlier. There's more daylight in the summertime than in the wintertime. So the times are constantly changing. Obviously not so much. That's why Shabbos, comes in at 4:50 this week, let's say, and then next week it'll be 5 o'clock because the days are getting longer now. The commandment is fulfilled in its excellence when it is read in the manner of Vesikin, We talked about this. The Second Minion. What's the Second Minion? These were pious men who treasured the mitzvahs and were careful to read it shortly before sunrise, in order to complete the Shema and its brachas at sunrise, and proceed with the Amidah immediately after. Like we said, okay, so Moshe is going to Israel now, and you go to Jerusalem, and you go to the Kotel. There's something called the Second Minion over there. I went to it once. The Second Minion is they start everything in the earliest time possible. So the earliest time, let's say you can say Shema, at that time would be, 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock. That means they would go to the Western Wall. They would begin their prayers at about 5:50 in the morning, so that when it came to 6 o'clock, they would say Shema right on the dot, the earliest possible time. And then they would be able to go into the Amidah prayer at the earliest possible time as well. So it's Vasikin, it means very early. You get up very early. Obviously, it shows that you're really into it. You do it with alacrity. Called the Vasikin Minion. They have a lot of Vasikin Minions in New York and whatnot. I do daven in the Vasikin Minion over here. It just happens to be at 7 o'clock. So it's not so early. In our country, the latest time for reading the Shema is before 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay, in his country, meaning this is Gottfried. He wrote this, he lived in Hungary. Okay, that's 7 o'clock in the morning, the latest time for reading the Shema. Okay. Nevertheless, as a last resort, if the time limit has passed, you are permitted to read the Shema with its bracha until 1/3 of the day. Now, so the mitzvah to say Shema, there's a mitzvah to say Shema 2 times a day. What if you pass that time? Yeah, what if I woke up at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and I missed the time for Shema? You should still nevertheless say the Shema with its blessings beforehand and afterwards, because it's considered as if you're reading Torah. And so there's a mitzvah in it. There's that mitzvah, and there's reward with that, so to speak. Again, we don't care about reward, but there's a great mitzvah in doing it. However, after 1/3 of the day is forbidden to recite the brachas, but the Shema itself may be read at any hour of the day. Some hold that you can even say the brachas, and you should do that. Okay. Now, how do you say the Shema? The Shema in the Torah, it says, "Uveshach b'cha uvkamecha." You should say it while you're sitting down, lying down, and when you get up. So there's actually a disagreement between Hillel and Shammai. Do you literally do you literally say the Shema while you're lying down? Literally lie down on the ground? Or does it mean the time to say it is in the evening? So obviously we hold that the time to say it is in the evening, and you should not say it laying down. The law is we do not follow Shammai. Do not do that. The Gemara goes into a story, or I think the Mishnah goes into a story of someone who did that. He's like, oh, he followed Shammai, and he laid down to say the Shema. It was like the last possible moment, and he laid down in the middle of the road, and someone stole his money. From there, when the Gemara gives a story, or the Mishnah gives a story, or the Talmud gives a story, it's to tell you basically what the halacha is, what to do and what not to do. So the Shema may be read either sitting or standing. It doesn't matter. However, if you are sitting, you're forbidden to follow the stricter view, which requires one to stand. However, you may not read the Shema while reclining. Okay, if you're sitting during the Shema, you cannot stand up in the middle of the Shema. You have to continue sitting down. According to Kabbalah, it's better to say Shema sitting down. In Kabbalah, which Chassidim follow a lot of Kabbalah, we do a lot of things sitting down. Kiddush, we say sitting down. Well, some of us do. Shabbos at night, Friday night, I say it's standing up. But Shabbos by day, you'll see a lot of Chassidim say the Kiddush, with the grape or with wine. They'll do it sitting down. Sephardim, you'll see put on tefillin sitting down. That's according to Kabbalah. Lubavitchers, there are Chabad Lubavitchers that do that sitting down. Most of us do it standing up. What are some other things? Shema, we try to say sitting down. There's a few things. It's the idea of Malchus, sitting down, whatever, coming down, drawing down. A lot of Kabbalah. Look in the Zohar for more information. Okay, if you're sitting, you're forbidden to follow the stricter view, which requires one to stand. If you're standing, you can say the Shema standing, by the way. It's just you can't sit or stand in the middle. Once you pick one, pick a lane and go, lady, man. However, you may not read the Shema while reclining. But if you are already reclining, you should turn completely on your side and read it. Yeah, we don't really eat like that nowadays. Yeah, like laying on our side. You shouldn't really recline. Bottom line is you should get up, sit on your tuchas. If you are ill and it's difficult to lie completely on your side, you must nevertheless incline somewhat to one side. So actually, see my father's on. One time I was in a car accident. I had a concussion, and they took me to the hospital. I could have left. If it happened, God forbid it happened again, I would just leave that day. I was totally fine. But nevertheless, they kept me at the hospital. They said you have to stay overnight. And I wasn't allowed to move. They wouldn't let me move. I don't know why. And one of the rabbis came in from yeshiva. And he came to hang out with me. And it came time for me to say the Shema. And I remember him saying, just try to get on your side. He helped me roll over. I was fine. I could have moved myself. They made me so neurotic in the hospital. Oh, your neck, your head, don't move. And then finally, some doctor came in and was like, "You're fine. You could leave." Anyway, but they helped me very carefully move to my side. I laid on my side and they said Shema. You shouldn't be laying back, kicking it. You shouldn't be laying on your back when you pray at all. You should never do that while you're praying. You should at least, if you can't move, you're not allowed to move, do anything you can to move to your side. In general, we don't lay on our backs. I guess unless you're doing sit-ups or something, then that's okay. But there's halacha talks about not laying on your back. When you sleep, you should lay on your side. If you need to lay down, lay on your side. If you want to eat, stay on your side, but for different reasons. Okay, before beginning, you should have the intention of fulfilling the commandment to read the Shema. Okay, so you might classic story in the Talmud. What happens, or the Mishnah? What happens if I forgot to say the Shema, but you know what? We're holding in Parsha. We're holding in Devarim. We're holding in the book, the Torah reading that actually says the Shema. We say the Shema. Yeah, I'm actually going to say the words Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Can I just fulfill my obligation then? Well, it depends. If you had intention to fulfill your obligation, can you fulfill your obligation? If you just say it, haphazardly, or you just happen to say it, you were learning, you just happen to say it, it doesn't count. You have to do it what's called kavana, intention. You have to be intentional about doing it. That's novel, because not with all mitzvahs do you have to be intentional. In other words, when you put on tefillin, if you're a man, you put on tefillin, and you have no intention. Well, no, I'm putting on tefillin. Some Chabad guy asked me in Central Park to put on tefillin. I'll put on tefillin. But that doesn't matter. That actually counts. You eat matzah on Pesach. Yeah, you have a mitzvah to eat matzah, even if you didn't have the intention. Like, I'm doing it for the mitzvah. I'm just eating it because my rabbi told me to eat it. That's okay. You still fulfill the obligation. With Shema, it's not enough just to say it. You have to do it. I'm saying it because it's a mitzvah to say it. It's kind of unique. When saying Shema, you should concentrate on its meaning. Echad. Okay, I'm not going to get so much into it. Let me just tell you how you say the Shema. You say the Shema like this. You cover, if you're a righty, you cover your hands over your eyes. If you're Sephardic, they go like this, I believe. They go like this. But Ashkenazim, or everybody else, you cover your eyes like this. Why do you cover your eyes, by the way? Two reasons, two classic reasons. One is so you wouldn't be distracted. You don't want to be distracted while you say. I just want to mention, when the Kohanim do what's called the Duchanin, you go to if you go to shul on a Yom Tiv, the Kohanim will give you a blessing. And what do? They put their taluses over their face, and we also don't look at them. We put our talus over our face. And for a long time, I thought, oh, you'll burn. If you see their face or you see what they're doing, you'll burn. No, that's not at all why we do it. We do it so we don't distract them. They cover their faces so that they don't get distracted by us, and we cover it so we don't distract them. What's his name? Spock? What's his real name? Anybody know? Star Trek? Yeah, he goes like this. He's not a Kohen. I forgot his name. If anybody remembers.
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy. Very nice. Thank you. Yeah. Leonard Nimoy. Yes, both my mother-in-law and my father. Yeah, thank you very much. Why would he wasn't a Kohen. He tells the story. I've heard him. I saw it on TV or YouTube, whatever. He peeked. He said, "I once went to shul and I peeked what they were doing, and I saw they did this, and I decided to do that." He wasn't. But interestingly enough. Anyway, so how do we say Shema? We cover our eyes like this, and I'm going to teach you how to say it properly. You say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, and then you go like this. You move your head in different directions. Why do we do that? Let me just preface something really quickly. You'll hear a lot of people say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's wrong, and the halacha is going to say that you're not allowed to do that. Why do people do that? They do it because the best way to do it is how do I say this? The Yemenites, I think Yemenites still do it like this. You ever go to a shul, it says Beth Israel or Beth Beth something, B-E-T-H. Where does that come from? That's the way we probably used to say it like that. You know, Moses himself probably used to pronounce it like that. Nowadays we say Bet or base, Bet Chabad. You know, Bet means a house, but the Dalet can be pronounced in different ways. It could be duh and it could be like that. So the best way to say Shema is like the way the Yemenites probably say it. But because we don't know how to do it properly, it's not our tradition, we don't do it like that. In other words, they'll say it like this: Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. They elongate it and they think about how Hashem fills the entire world, all the different directions, north, east, south, west, up and down. That's why we move our head like this. People nowadays, they think it's still okay to do that, even though I don't do the TH. Yeah, they go Echad. That's wrong. You're actually saying an incorrect word. So we don't do that. The best way to do it is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's it. Is that clear? I feel like I said a lot of things. So again, why is it with the TH? Why do you see the TH? Because that is the original. That's probably an old way. Probably the original way of doing it, the correct way of doing it. But we don't really know, because it's not our tradition anymore. Unless you're a Yemenite, tradition, we change the tradition. We don't say it like that. We say it a different way. We don't know how to do it properly. And tradition becomes Torah. That becomes your law. Whatever your tradition is, wherever you come from, if that's the tradition of your community, you have to keep up that tradition. And you're not allowed to do something. What?
Rabbi.
Yeah.
So why at Chabad, like when I'm at Chabad, we always like sing it.
What do we sing?
We say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's by the Torah, when they take out the Torah?
No, every right that.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but okay, you should still say Echad. You should say the word Echad properly. You should be careful to say Echad. Don't go around shul telling people you're not saying it properly. Just for yourself, you should do it. You'll cause more harm than good. But for yourself, you should only do.
Okay, thanks.
I just muted myself. Okay. Can you guys hear me? I hit mute. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. So the best way to say Shema, once again, is cover your eyes like this. I'm sure you all know that. You say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And then we move our head right, left, up, down, front, back, which refers to all the different directions that Hashem fills. All of the directions. Hashem fills everywhere. There's a mitzvah to think about how Hashem fills the entire world, that everything is unified. Echad means one, that there's nothing else besides God. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't explain the second reason why we cover our eyes. So we cover our eyes, one, so we won't be distracted. And the second one, it's kind of a interesting one, is because I'm about to say that God is one and there's nothing else in the world. There's nothing else. Okay, in our reality, we don't see it like that, right? We see a world. Until Mashiach comes, until we are able to see the truth, we see separation, we see physicality, materialism. We don't see how God is the only true existence. So we're kind of making a statement. We're covering up the truth, and we're accepting the true reality, the true truth, and we're covering up what we see, and we're focusing on what we know and what we understand and what is the true reality. So that's that's one of the reasons why we cover our eyes, which I always found to be a very interesting reason. Okay, the sound of the dalet should also be prolonged, right? That's the halacha. Echad, giving yourself enough time to reflect that the Holy One, blessed be He, is singular in His world and rules over all the four corners of the universe. You must not prolong the sounds longer than this. You should be careful not to distort the pronunciation of the word echad by overemphasizing the letters. For some people, actually distort the word. Some say echad, and others say echad. Yeah, echad. You'll hear people do that. It is better not to prolong the sounds at all than to prolong them and distort the word. So that's why nowadays we just say echad. That's it. It is customary to say the verse of the Shema out loud in order to stimulate your concentration and to put your right hand over your eyes. After saying echad, pause momentarily and say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Vad. Who taught us that verse? That is not in the Torah. Who taught us that verse? Moses taught us that verse. When Moses got the Torah, he heard angels say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Vad, and he stole their line. And he said to everybody, we're going to say this very quietly. Except on Yom Kippur. We say it then aloud because we're like angels. Yeah, we don't eat because we're like angels. We wear white because we're like angels. We don't wear shoes because we're like angels. Here too, you must concentrate on the meaning of the words. I mean, it's kind of a wild, the adding of the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Le'olam Vad didn't happen until, I believe, 1,000 years after. Moses taught us that verse, but we didn't start saying it until the Second Temple period. Tells you the power of the rabbis to be able to add a phrase to right the mitzvah of Shema. What is the mitzvah of the Shema? It's to say that first line. The mitzvah from the Torah is to say the first line, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. The next part in the Torah, the next verse in the Torah is V'ahavta es Adonai Elecha b'chol levav b'chol chalav sh'chol v'midecha, and that's also part of the Shema. So we say it, and since the times of Moses, that's how they said it. Shema Yisrael, followed by the V'ahavta, followed by the next thing, V'haya im Shemaya. The Second Temple period, the rabbis added Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Le'olam Vad. Some deep Kabbalah on why they did that. Because, in short, we have this concept in halacha. I should do a history of the oral tradition. It's a fascinating idea, fascinating class. If I do say so myself. And it's a fascinating concept, a fascinating history. I never actually gave the class before. We have this concept that the further we move away from Moses, the less spiritual we are. It's called the Yeridus Hadoros, the decline of the generations. We become weaker. We don't know as much Torah. That's why things started getting written down, the oral tradition. That's why we have so much more Torah now written in books than they ever did in the history, because we have to compensate, so to speak. Because it was like this decline in our spiritual stature between the first temple and the second temple, there's always this added Torah. There's always added Torah to help us stay strong. They added this verse that even though the Shema says that God is one, there's nothing else, then we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso, blessed is this kingdom, which kind of implies that there is, so to speak, there is, even according to the Torah, there is a kingdom, there's people, there's creation. I know you guys don't see that God is the only thing, but it's also true. There is a creation in the world. The Torah itself says there's a creation, so you can declare that and feel good about yourselves. And I'm oversimplifying it. obviously there's tremendous Kabbalistic significance to this line. And I'm not just saying like, oh, it's okay, you poor little people, you. It's, oh, yeah, you're doing a good job. Yeah, whatever you think is right is right. No, this is founded in Torah, and it's a real concept. And there is a kingdom. We know God did create a world. Bereshis bara Elokim. God did create a world. That's just on one reality. The super truth, the real truth is that on a certain level, that's true. God created a world. But on an absolute truth, this is real. This is what Chassidus is needed for. And in absolute truth, there really is nothing else besides God. Much like the ray of a sun. Yeah. What's the parable? You have the sun, and you have a ray of the sun, and I see rays coming into my room right now. Rays of the sun. Are the rays separate from the sun? Well, from my perspective, yeah, they are. I see the sun over there, and I see a ray coming in here. But in truth, what are they? They're just an extension of the sun. From the sun's perspective, the ray is still the sun. It's just an extension of the sun. So it depends on your perspective. So on a certain reality, there really is no other God. Yeah, God is compared to the sun. The sun is like God. It's a parable for God. It's just this constant giver, light, power. Keeps everything going. And there's nothing else. According to the sun, all of its power is merely an extension of itself. But from the perspective of the receiver, I see separation. I see rays. I see the sun. I see whatever. It's a classic. This is a classic Kabbalistic and Hasidic concept. You should be very careful. You should enunciate the words very carefully. Here we go. I'll just end with this. It's more important to say the words precisely and correctly than it is to actually understand what you're saying. Now, you should also try to understand. There's a mitzvah to understand Torah. But with regards to the mitzvah of Shema, just say it correctly. All right, I think I'm going to have to stop over there. Tonight, I will do the weekly roundup, and we'll talk a little bit. We'll talk about a lot of concepts. We'll talk about hippies. We'll talk about the splitting of the sea. You should join. I think you'll like it. Does anybody have any questions? Obviously, we're not done with the Shema. I basically just scratched the surface. But okay.
Rabbi, question.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is the difference between reciting the Shema and reading the Shema?
I don't know. I have to see it in the Hebrew. This is read the Shema very carefully. Reciting, I don't know. What does it say? Reciting and reading?
So is it that once you miss that time to recite the Shema, now if you miss that time, now you're reading it as you're reading Torah?
Yeah, that might be very good. That might be right. Let me just go back up and see. Let me just see. Mutar likreis kriyishma ben Yeshiv ben Aymed. Yeshiv Amar. Let me just see what in the Hebrew. Likreis kishu shechev im shechev kavar. Okay, no, it's before this. His chil is man kriyishma. Shach is going to nechshav hayim na always shach memuchar. Yeah, there bekaven like shma. Okay, nope, not here. Okay, where is it? Where do we say you should read it if you miss the time? Also, yeah, it says Oimer, say the Shema the whole day. You could say it. Okay, I guess interesting. I don't know. I have to look that up. It changes the word. Omer, Omer means to say, versus likrois, which means to read. I don't know. You're right. That's how he presents it. I don't know. I have to look that up. Good.
All right. Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I'll look it up. I bet you I'm going to ask somebody. I'm going to ask the rabbi over here. Is a Rav? He'll be like, "It's just going to." I don't know. But I'll ask him anyway.
All right, cool.
All right. Okay, everybody. I'll see you tonight. If you God will.
All right, I appreciate all the time.
Fudge goes into hate. He's going to Israel today. You should have a lot. We should all come with you. It would be great, and you should enjoy. Yeah, going to Israel, it's called an aliyah. You get an elevation. The learning there is better. The air is there. The air there for learning is better. Spirituality is better. But you should have a lot of atzlacha. And we should all be together with you immediately.
Thank you, Rabbi. Appreciate you.
It's not the end, by the way.
No, definitely not. It's just the beginning.
This is the beginning. Okay. Okay. We should have a safe trip. Be well.
Thank you.
All right, brother. See you guys.
Shalom.